Welcome, everyone. We are excited to have you here today. This is the last class today of our virtual Sunday classes sponsored by the BYU Family History Library located in Provo, Utah. I'm Marianne Mielek, and I will be your host for this class. This class today is what most of us call Geneanet, but actually I'm going to let Elaine Gunther tell us how it's really pronounced. So the class is Geneanet. Let's open the door to this amazing site. Elaine has extensive experience in genealogy and finding stories of ancestors using often overlooked resources. Today, she will teach us about one of those often overlooked resources. So with that, Elaine, the time is yours.
Thank you. I recently discovered Geneanet, and let me I'm going to play a recording by my son-in-law who speaks French and how it's supposed to be said.
Geneanet.
I'll do it again.
Geneanet.
Geneanet. They don't use T at the end of the words in French, I guess, but that's how it's done correctly. However, if you walked into some family history center, it would be good to say Geneanet because that's what they think it is. But it's an amazing site. First of all, it wasn't started by Ancestry, but it was purchased by Ancestry, and it is owned by them and has a lot of very professional things that I'm sure they've added to the site. It has 5+ million members who have shared their information, and they've shared their trees. It has, in those trees, 8+ billion individuals. And it's the largest French genealogical database. I hope you don't just shut this down now, because this is not just a French database. They're fabulous for French, absolutely fabulous. I started working with some French ancestors, and I was panicked because I don't speak French, but this has made it very possible for me to do that. But they reach far beyond France and Northern Europe. Because they have 6 million digitized records, 4 million books, and newspapers that they can draw from. Includes all countries. Anyone that has submitted a family tree, they won't reject it. It could be from Saudi Arabia. It'll be there if they've submitted it. And it has a remarkable library. This is what I love about this site the very most, because for me, family history work is more than just dates and names and places. It's their stories, and Geneanet helps us to find our ancestors' stories very easily. It deals with all of these languages. So let me start walking you through the site. This is just an introductory class. I'm sure there are other things that are available on the site, but this is what I think would be most useful to all of you. The first thing that you would do is to sign into an account in Family Search. And I'm going to look for this personal identification number and see what I can find. If you're not familiar with Family Search, when you get in, you would start with Family Tree, click on Find, and then since I'm using the personal identification number, you would put that in the search bar. You would not try to search by name because you have no idea what name I'm taking you to. And then you would click on the search bar. And this is a Paul Adolphe Boissy. I'm sure I'm not saying any of this right because I don't speak French, but here is his record. Let's see what they have available for him. So we're here, and we're going to go to search records. See, there's not very much entered, and actually the things that have been entered, I've done it. So we go to search records on this right, just like you would use Family Search or Ancestry or Find My Past or My Heritage. Geneanet is also listed there, and that's the one we're going to click on to take us to their site so we can search for him. Now, what it brings up is quite a few family trees and some sources that are listed in this little column. There's quite a bit of information here. I'm going to work with a tree by the J. Boissy 2, and I understand that there is another one by this person, but I'm using the one today, I don't know, if you were get on there, you would have to see which one is the one I'm using today. And I can't say it's like the 5th one down because they just keep moving everything. But we're going to go to a family tree and see what we can learn about Paul on that family tree. So here we'll click on this site and it'll take us to his persons page. This is also an archives record. This is a source that you could click on as you're working with this person as well. Sources are kind of intermixed with the trees. All right, this is taking us up to his profile page. Anything blue will take you to another person's profile page. We have his parents, we have his spouse, we have children, we have siblings. And so anytime we click on one of these blue people, it's going to take us to another, that person's page, the person that we have clicked on. So I'm going to find out about Paul's father and by clicking on his name. There he is now. It's his profile page. You're going to find out who his parents are, who his spouse and children are, whatever information they have found. So you can find out about each of the people on this page by clicking on the blue. But I'm going to return to Paul's profile page by using a black arrow on the upper left. Okay, so here we are back to Paul's page. Let's see what else we can find out from this site. They apparently have a family tree. So if you click on family tree, this is what will come up. His family tree is all of his ancestors with him highlighted. Okay, that's not too unfamiliar when you use Ancestry. It's very like that. Let's see what else we can find out. Here is a timeline that we can click on. That takes us to some interesting things. It's his timeline, the events in his life, what all happened, taken from his family trees that have been submitted. And it also has a map of the area. Here's Paris, and here he is way over here. The name of the town isn't even on the map. It's just a little place. But it gives you an idea of where he's from. Let's go up to the top of the page now, to the resource bar. We're going to click on the resource, and this is what comes up. We have a drop-down box with several things: origin of last name, first name, how to search your French ancestors, a blog. But I'm going to go to the origin of the last name. Names fascinate me, and I love to see where they came from. So when I click that, it brings me to a search engine that says find the origin of a last name. And so I typed in his last name, and then I hit the search button, and this is what it brings up. The origin of the Boissy is much like many of the French names that I've come across. It's the name of a town from Le Boissy. And there's several places in France that have that same name. And it was derived from the Latin word buxus, or box tree. And so it gives me an idea. It's kind of fun to learn about it. But on this same page, it's really interesting. This is a timeline that shows you the history of that name and where they were located over from about 1500 on, which is about when records started to be kept. You can see it's all over France. It's not as definitive. So I'm going to switch to the name of Papineau. And in the 1500s, you can see this bar slides back and forth. In the 1500s, this is where they all were. They aren't anywhere else. So if you're searching for someone in that time frame, this is where, with that name, this is going to be payload right here. Now we can go to different times. This is the 1700, where they were in the 1700s. They've spread out a little bit. Okay, this is where they started. They've kind of moved from there for some reason. I'm going to point this out. This La Rochelle was a very populated much by the French Protestants. And there's quite a few of them there. And I think it'll come to play in the next slide. We'll see where they are when we go to the 1800s. In the 1800s, they had moved on. They were still in France, but they included London and the Netherlands. And the reason I'm thinking they might have been French Protestant, I don't know. I haven't looked hard enough for this family. But the Protestants in 1685 either had to stop being Protestant and say they were Catholic, or they pretty well, their lives were pretty well over. They couldn't make a living or anything else. So they were restricted from leaving France, but they left. And a lot of them ended up in London, and a lot of them ended up here in the Netherlands. So I suspicion this may have been some French, the Protestants, the Huguenots family. I don't know that for sure, though. Also on this page, below this little map, most found places for the name Papineau. So if this is your last name, or you're looking for your last name, it's going to tell you some of the places that have populations by that name. I think it's amazing. Some people, it looks like some of them went to Montreal, Canada. Well, if you're working with those people there, it's important to know maybe possibly where they immigrated to. So that will give you that information. Also to the right, there's a box that has variants of the person's last name, different ways of spelling it, so that as you work on that name, because no one knew how to write their name in this time frame, mostly they didn't. It was whatever the clerk wrote, and these are the variations that possibly, if you find them in your research, could be your people. So it gives you clues to that. Okay, we're back. We're going to go back. We're back to the profile page, and there's a lot of information here that you could just copy over to your whatever site you're using to keep your records. But it's just information that's been submitted by someone. It may be very good. It may be just a guess. And you want to verify your information. And they're not going to give you too many resources on this page. So anything that you get on this site should be resourced somewhere else as well, if not on this site. There's places to cite things on this site, but you will need to look for resources. It's undocumented. So some of the sources are found on Geneanet. For instance, this is a record from the archives in Paris for marriages. Well, that's a nice hint, but it sometimes would be very hard to find those records. But this is why this site is so fabulous. All you have to do is click on this name, and it brings up that transcribed record for you. You don't have to search anywhere for it. It's amazing. All right there with one click. If you're not finding what you want from that site, you can go on to other sites. They're partners with Ancestry. So you can look at Ancestry and search. Look, there's a lot of information on this guy. Once you have some basic information, filling in the blanks becomes pretty easy as long as you're working with the truth. Hints may be popping up if you're working with Family Search. A hint may pop up. This is not his name, but there weren't any hints for him. But this is a hint that came from another woman that is from France that just popped up very conveniently on Family Search. Or you may have to do a full out search on Family Search, which I have done here. And they do have a census for him in 1896 that's available to prove out what you've gotten as clues by looking at these family trees on Geneanet. Now, there's some other things that we haven't looked at on that profile page. Some notes. So we're going to return to his original profile page on Geneanet and see what more we can learn from him. So here are some notes that people have added, some little details about their life. Now, this is in French because it's a French people have turned it in, but you can translate that to English. You just right click on your mouse and select, let me go back on that one. You right click with your mouse and select translate to English. And there it is. Marriage certificate, registered page. It's all available for you to read. So you don't even have to speak French, which is really good because I don't. You can also, when you're in Family Search, you can right click just like we did here and say translate to English, and it will translate back and forth from languages. I have a friend that is, she has a Japanese name, and she can go back and forth from the Japanese characters to English just by clicking on her mouse. So it's a very convenient thing to know about. Okay, here's a note. This is about the marriage. I can read that much. It's in French here. And a divorce, apparently. So that's some information that we want to concentrate on. It's a hint for us. There's another way to translate if you don't speak the language. And this could be in German, it could be in English and you speak French. It could be go any way around. But if you don't speak the language that it's in, you can right click, but you can also Google Translate. And I sometimes use Google Translate as well because I'm not always sure that I like what they've come up with as a translation. So I'll check it with Google Translate. So this is what I got when I right clicked and had it go to English. This is what I got, but I checked it by going to Google Translate. I did a copy of this, and then they translated it over for me, so I knew exactly what it said. So you can use both on this particular site if you're working with French people. What's interesting is Google Translate, I thought, was very thorough. Europeans do the month and day differently than we do, and so it is written this way for the European works, but they fixed it for us, so it was August 4th, 1898, that they had a marriage certificate. Okay, so they're very thorough in their work. Now, we're still on the profile page. Up here, we started with these notes, but over here, we have some other things that we can look at on this side. First of all is an ancestry chart. So I clicked on that, and this is what I got. This guy did a great job. He's got their signatures. He's done it. This person has done a good job. Okay, so that's the ancestry button. They also have a descendancy chart, and some of these go quite extensive, and this one doesn't particularly, but could save you a lot of work, give you a lot of clues as to what you need to look for and find to prove out. So this is his descendant chart. So that's available to you. We also have a printable family tree that you can access from this site. And you'll recognize this. It's the fan chart, all ready for you to print, if that's what you like, how you like to do your work. Now, we're going to look at sources again, because this is a really thorough researcher, and they added all their sources. And so this says search the original records. So you can click on that, and this is what it brings up. You have 4 things that have come from French archives. Lots of work saved here, lots of work. So I'm going to click on this green and see what it brings up. Well, it's going to bring up a French version of permission to use the site, terms and conditions for the reuse of public information. So I came up in French. I Googled it and translated it to, I think I may have just right-clicked and translated it to English. when you click accept, there it takes you to an original record. You didn't have to leave the site. This is just amazing how they have organized this and made this available to us. It's a lot of work saving. Now I'm going to show you the fun part. This is my favorite part of the Geneanet. It's their library. Let me tell you a little bit about this library. It's their library, but it's connected to other libraries. They are partners with Family Search. They are partners with Ancestor. They can access those sites' libraries all in one place. And they search by name. They can search by name. And when you search by name, you'll find your family members in documents that you would not even think to look. You would never know that some of them would even exist, but because it searches by name, it can find them for you. So we're going to click on this little results in the Geneanet library. Okay, this is one of the things that came up. It's a bulletin, municipal official of the village, Paris. Was Paris a village? Well, and it's got information that's the right name. So let's look and see what they have on this gentleman. First, it's going to ask you to click on this view document because it's going to take you somewhere external from their site. So view document. And here we have a newspaper article that here is his name. Here is his name here. This talks about a divorce and a marriage. This, you cannot right click this and get it to translate. You have to take this you'll have to take over to Google Translate to translate if you don't speak the language. But I have found that sometimes it will not let you make a copy of this, just a screenshot type of a copy, that you can take over to Google Translate. When it won't let you do that, you download it, and then you can do it. So there's your download button. And I just did a copy. I just copied that, took it to Google Translate, and there's the English version of that. I'll try to read it from here, but I often put in notes on people, notes about them, these little things, because they tell the story, and I want to know the story. Interesting, what we've learned here, he's a road mender. He resided on Rue Pascal in Paris, and he was 21 years old when this divorce and remarriage happened. Lots of information there that tells the story. Now, we also have a chance to contact the tree owner. If you have a question, you can contact them. What you do is you click this button, and I decided I wanted to hear what their philosophy was, so I translated what he wrote or she wrote. Learn, share, as long as there is exchange, there is hope. Sense of grand corps malade, which summarizes for me the principle of genealogy. So this is a person that is happy to share their information. So we can contact that person. Once you hit that contact button, you can send a message. It's cute. I have received some messages from people in France that have added pictures and things and documents to some of the names that I have worked on, and they were really cute. They wrote in somewhat broken English, but they wrote to me and helped me with my records, so it's always fun to collaborate. Now, as I said, this is not just in a European site. It's fabulous there, but it's just as good if you're going to work in America or other places. If they have a tree, someone submitted a tree, you can access it here. So let's look at one that's an American name. Working from Family Search once again. Here is a James Beck, who is one of my husband's relatives. Nicely filled in, but Only 7 memories have been added. And so I'm going to see what Geneanet can tell me more about this James Beck. Okay, so I'm going, and here we have a family tree. Several people have turned in family trees. I can look at those and compare them. But this strikes my eye. This is a book. And it's apparently his name is in that book. He's from the same area. So I'm going to select that book and see what I can get from it. Once again, you have to have permission to go out of their site to view the document. So you click on that. And this is taken us to a document that Family Search has in its archives. Click on View Inside. Okay, so it takes you here. Now you're going to need to search. I want to search to find out where he is in that book. So you click on the search icon up here. Put his name in here for the search. And then click OK. And this is what it brings up. It's amazing. Many pages. This man is mentioned on many pages in this book, but this is what's really fun about this site. You do not have to go on and find this book and go all that would entail that. All you have to do to read about James Beck is click on this blue View Page 170. And when I clicked on it, this is what comes up, and he's all through that, all the genealogy of all those people in their area. Now, I will tell you, I would never have found that book without that name search. Didn't know it existed. I would never have found this. But Geneanet found it because it searches by name. Here's another ancestor in our family, Hugh Moon. And let's see what they have. He was a pioneer in the early 1800s. Let's see what it has about him on this site. Now we'll find him a different way since we're already in Family Search. You don't go back over here to find, you go to here. So we click on Find, put in his ID number and search for him. There he is. So I'm going to bring up his personal identification page, personal ID page. Okay, had never tried this before because he was an American. He lived in America. He started in England, but he lived in America. So I clicked on Geneanet to find out where I can find him. Looks like some people have loaded up family trees. It's unusual because people are just beginning to start to realize that they can use this. When I first looked this up, there were no family trees. So people are catching on to this Geneanet site. So I'm going to go to the library. And there is quite a bit that is written. He's in quite a few things in that library. I'm just going to pick out a few. This one, I'm going to do latter-day immigration. So I'm going to click on this red, this page. This will take you to the page in the book. I don't have to look up this book. I just go there. And it just so happens that the first group of Mormons that came to the United States from England, John Moon was the leader of that group, and he was Hugh Moon's brother. So in this immigration article, it talks about how many of them, their family came, their names that came with them, the ship that they came on, and other information. And I could read on to get more information about them since they were the leaders of the company. There's another book that struck my attention, Pioneers and Prominent Men of Utah. And once again, if you click on this, it will take you to the page, right to the page. You don't have to flip through or anything. And there he is, Hugh Moon and Alice Plum of Eccleston, England, and a little bit of their story and about their family. Easy to find. They become more than just a name a date and a place they live when you find out their stories. Here's one, another one. I know he ended up in Idaho. And here's an article about progressive men of southern Idaho. And I'm going to go to that one. And as well, it goes right to the page. His daughter was marrying someone, and they did a little bit of a write about that. I could go on and on. One more, the family of Henry Moon, Mormon pioneer. This Henry Moon was his brother. And his story would be the same story. Once again, just view inside, and it will take you right to the pages that he's in. But I wanted to show you something else first instead. When you have gone into the genealogy library, this box pops up. It says search filters. So I clicked on newspapers, and there was an article in the Deseret Evening News. So I wanted to bring it up. View document because it's external. And here it is. This is from the Library of Congress. This is abandoned manufacturers of Utah, people that started business and that didn't happen. And I found him. He and another friend, W.A. McMaster, started up a rope and twine factory. Now, I will tell you, the family knows a great deal about this man, but no one knew that he started up a rope factory when he first came to Utah. So we've added a little bit to his story, and it's kind of fun. This is was it really interesting to me? The Pick and Flower of England, the illustrated story of Mormons in Victorian England. So I decided I would look at that one. Once again, clicking to view a document. There it is. View inside. There's the document. Let me show you what I found in there. They came from a town called Eccleston. I knew that, but I didn't know the history of all that happened there. This is the house that they lived in, and they had a picture of it in this very, very old document. And in this, it talks about, this was Francis Moon's house of Leyland, and they were taught by Elder Kimmel and were anxious for him to come back and pay him another visit. They wanted to talk to him further. And as it told the history of their experience in England with missionaries. Now, I have to throw this in just because this is the current day. This is that house today. It still looks just about the same, doesn't it? I'll tell you a little quick story because it was fun. This was my husband in the picture, and we'd found a house. We had to go to they didn't have addresses. We had to go to the post office, and they had to tell us where it was. But we were getting pictures out front, and the lady that lived there drove up and said, what are you doing in front of my house? So we told her that his family had come and lived in that house at one time. She's, oh, come on in. So we went in. And in England, they have to keep the exteriors the same, but they can gut the insides. They can do whatever they want with the inside. So they had totally remodeled this home on the inside. And she told us that they had found a little hidden room that had been used to hide as a hiding place for the Catholic priests during the time of Henry VIII, because he brought in Protestantism, and Catholic priests were at that point in big trouble. So they had a room in their house that would hide the priest. So it was kind of an interesting story. It's always fun to go and visit the places your family came from. Now, further on in the same booklet, it has a little quote from John Moon. He led this group of people, and this is how it seemed to him when he arrived. At 5, saw Long Island all covered with green trees and white houses, such a beautiful sight I never saw. I did rejoice to behold the land of Joseph. Yeah, I thought it did pay for all the hardships which I had gone through. We have had much affliction, 'tis true, more than I can describe, but after all, I do not know that I have ever heard one word of murmuring in all our afflictions, we have all got over safe and a state of tolerable health. It's kind of fun to hear what he had to say when he rejoiced. Now, he never did make it to Salt Lake City. He died of cholera along the way. Now, I'm going to share with you some things that I have found that I would never have known existed except for this site. Let me just show you a few of them. They're of interest. I told you about the French Protestant Huguenots who had to leave France or renounce their religion pretty much. And I found this as I was researching some of the people. This is a recant paper. And in this paper, this is it in French. I translated it. Let's look at this. And they abjured their heresy in the presence of several in the parish. They said they were no longer French Protestants, but they were Catholics again. And they had to all sign. They didn't necessarily sign those names. They had marks and they said what their names were. I had no idea that anything like that existed. And Geneanet found them for me and helped me with the story. And then I found some that had the name of the Milo name in them, which were my ancestors. That was their last name. This is an interesting book. This is in English because my family came to London when they left. And this is a description of the Huguenot immigrants by their own minister. And I will tell you, this is precious to me because he's telling me what they were like. Let me read it to you. The jet black hair, the swarthy complexion, the dark, brilliant, and often passionate eye, the small hand, the lithe, well-bred figure, the indescribable charm of demure, graceful, courteous, and self-possessed, and often a slightly oratorical manner, and an instinctive taste in dress, all so different from the ordinary type of the London poor, are things which it is impossible to mistake and are the more striking when their possessors are living in wretched garrets and often in the extremest poverty. Some of them still cherish a reasonable pride in their long pedigrees and in the distinguished and noble surnames which they bear. A nation of martyrs, not forgetful that they were once among the most prosperous of London artisans. That's a description of my people, and it's priceless to me. And I just found it in a book because of this amazing site that helps me find it. I have to say that they did have a distinctive dress style. They were silk weavers, or linen weavers, and their clothing was of a different degree of elegance than the people that were living in their poverty-stricken areas. They were doing that. I had a family by the name of Paul, and I found a story on them that no one in the family had ever seen, but it was found on Geneanet. And I knew he was a carpenter, and it said that he owned a carpenter shop on a corner, which later years became the Paul Meat Market. I had no idea that they'd switched over and run a meat market. Just little tidbits that are kind of fun. I have a great-grandfather that had the authority to marry, and he married people in their homes. This was in someone's journal. They had written about their wedding day. I didn't know the person. I would never in a million years have found this story, except that it did a name search on Geneanet, and it came up with this story. It's kind of fun. He performed the ceremony, married them in the home, and then he entertained at the wedding. He was a part of the wedding entertainment. I really like this guy. He could be serious and he could be fun. And it said what he did was the cakewalk. And I thought, what is the cakewalk? I've never heard of it. So, of course, we can Google anything today. And I found out that the blacks were kind of mocking their slave owners with a dance. They couldn't do it any other way at this time frame. So they did a crazy dance. They pranced around prissy-like their slave owners, and then kind of do this little crazy dance with it. And actually, in the 1890s, it was quite the rage. And so that's what he and his wife did to entertain at this wedding. I have to tell you, I like this guy. He's got both sides of his personality. Here's another one I just discovered this week. This is the Discaris. I don't know how you say it right, but this is their genealogy. This is in English. They went to London and it was in English. So I was able to find out all the members of their families. There was more than one sheet. I'm just showing you the one to this. So that's pretty well what I have to present. I hope you'll try this site, no matter where your family are from. It's my go-to site now. It's the first place I look for anything.